Listen, I'm not going to fully come out and say that the winter 2024 season was one of the worst seasons of anime we've had in a couple of years, but it was close. In fact, I believe this season had the least amount of shows I was keeping up with that I've had since I started being an anime content creator over 3 years ago. Things were a bit slow, and this is partially due to the fact that a lot of the shows that we figured would be guaranteed hits really weren't. Like Ninja Kamui and The Witch and the Beast turned out to be way worse than we anticipated. I mean, yeah, the fights in Ninja Kamui were some of the best choreo I've ever seen in anime, period, but wow, was the writing terrible. And the only thing worse than the writing was the English dub, which is crazy for a Toonami show. On top of that, the 4 top anime of the season being Mashle, Solo Leveling, Delicious in Dungeon, and a new season of Classroom the Elite really tells you all you need to know about this season of anime. Though both Delicious in Dungeon and Solo Leveling impressed me in ways I didn't think they would, and Mashle is always a fun watch even though this arc is entirely ripped from Naruto. Those being your top 4 anime of the season is a bit like looking at the current Gokage in Naruto and thinking that that's good enough to roll over the strongest version of the universe ever. But enough about the pessimism. We have much better days ahead of us, as I believe that the spring 2024 roster is one of the best rosters we've gotten in years. I mean, we're talking spring 2021 levels of hype. When we got MHA's 5th season, To Your Eternity, Odd Taxi, Tokyo Revengers' 1st season, 86, Fruit Basket's final season, and Vivi Fluoride Eye's song, all in one season. Which is why today I want to sit down and give you a slight rundown on the plot of all the anime that I'm hyped for that are coming up in spring 2024. And thus I want to help convince you why you should keep up with the anime that I am keeping up with. And hopefully, because we're going to be talking about so many different upcoming anime, in this list you'll find one of those anime that'll tickle your fancy. Because today we're talking everything you need to know for the spring 2024 anime season. But before we get to convincing you to spend more time watching TV this upcoming spring, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of getting weekly rundowns on all of these anime, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happens in anime and manga every single week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're gonna try and find more time this upcoming spring to find anime, then you should look the part, and go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So while this video is probably titled something like Everything You Need to Know before the spring 2024 anime season, I don't want to mislead you here. We're doing a ranked and explained video. And while we could go through the My Anime listing of all the seasonal spring 2024 anime that are coming out in the next coming weeks, and that's a lot of work. And I know next to nothing about more than half of those projects. So instead, we're going to be tackling this video in the only way I deem logical to tackle videos like this. And that is that I'm going to be going over the anime that I'm most hyped for in the spring 2024 season in order of the level of my hype. That is to say that the first entry on our list I'll be the least hyped about, and the last I'll be the most hyped about. It's subjective. I'm sorry, but we will be talking about where these listings fall in the My Anime list in terms of how many people are anticipating to watch this show. So you'll be getting the popularity rankings as well, amongst other things like a synopsis, an explanation of who's animating it, and why to watch this show. Now that the rules are out of the way, let's get to the first entry on our list. Windbreaker. Now, well, the natural conclusion to draw here from me saying that Windbreaker is at the bottom of my list is that I don't think Windbreaker is going to be very good. But in actuality, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, out of all of the anime coming out in the spring 2024 season, I believe that Windbreaker has the highest probability of becoming the dark horse, a show that relatively few people are waiting for that blows up into massive popularity. The best comparison I can think of in recent years is Tengoku Daimakyo, or The Heavenly Delusion, a show that a lot of people didn't feel the need to check in for week 1, but by the time that week 4 or 5 rolls around, everybody is watching.
But then Nick, if you have such high hopes for Windbreaker, why is it so low?
But what I do know is that it's a story about a boy whose name is Hakura Sakura, which is an incredible name. And Hakura wants to fight his way to the top of his delinquent high school, as Hakura has been sent to a reformation school of sorts where brawn and might are the only things that matter. And thus, once he stands atop of his delinquent high school, he will be the strongest delinquent in his town. And thus, it's a relatively cut and dry delinquency high school story about a character who beats those around him and slowly but surely amasses a following of delinquents. That is to say, former enemies who become friends. And thus Hakura will slowly but surely amass power until eventually he's rise to the top of the ranks of all delinquents. But if this is such a vanilla white toast story, why do I believe it will do so well in the upcoming season? Well, that's because of the absolutely historic fall off of Tokyo Revengers. See, while some people can say that Tokyo Revengers is so much more than in a delinquency story, as there's also the Erased-esque mechanic where Takemichi is able to go back to the future and then pop back to the past to make sure that the future is changed for the better. We'd all be lying to ourselves if we said that Takemichi going back to the future was even close to the best part of Tokyo Revengers. The Tokyo Revengers' rise to power in 2021 was like nothing I'd ever seen before, but the poor animation and Takemichi being the main character slowly but surely killed all hype that show had. That and the fact that it became a Hulu exclusive, and once you take something off Crunchyroll, it loses a lot of steam, especially in America. And ever since the fall off of Tokyo Revengers, the world has been looking for a lovable delinquency story. And I believe that Windbreaker has the capacity to answer that yearning, because Windbreaker has all the things that made Tokyo Revengers great. Brawls, great character design, a ripping J-rock soundtrack, and more than anything, lovable monsters as MCs. But it also has what Tokyo Revengers lacked, which is an MC who can stand up for himself and good animation. In fact, I would say from what we've seen thus far that Windbreaker's animation style looks better than good, because Windbreaker is being animated by Cloverworks. And if that sounds familiar to you, it should, because they're the people who animated Promised Neverland, Bunny Girl Senpai, Spy Family, Darling in the Franxx, Horimiya, and so much more. And it looks like in Windbreaker, they're debuting a new type of animation style that I think could revolutionize how anime is approached. See, it appears as though, from what I've seen from the promotional videos, that Windbreaker is going to be animated in an almost imperceptible mix of 2D and 3D animation. That is to say, and I can't really confirm as to whether or not this is true or not, that Cloverworks has somehow found a way to make CGI look hand-drawn in order to increase fluidity in combat without losing detail. I say this because the way that the characters move in the promotional content makes me feel as though it is CGI, but it looks hand-drawn. And the versatility and ease of animation that comes along with CGI, if you can make it look good, is a massive upgrade to the animation industry. So all in all, even if it is just to see if Cloverworks is about to bust open the anime industry as a whole, I believe this show is a must-watch. But what's crazy is that Windbreaker isn't even the only anime that Cloverworks is coming out with in spring 2024, as Cloverworks is also animating the next entry on our list, the long-anticipated return of Black Butler, which hasn't aired a season in 10 years. Yes, that's right, season 3 of Black Butler, the last season, came out in 2014. So this season, which will be the 4th of Black Butler, is covering the public school arc in the manga, where CL goes to a high-class, high-powered boys' school in London that's been dealing with a rash of disappearances of its students. And while usually the idea of more Black Butler would get the child inside of me who's stuck in 2012 as excited as they've ever been, I don't have a huge amount of faith for the idea of this return. And it has nothing to do with Black Butler as an IP. Okay, I mean, it's got a little bit to do with Black Butler as an IP. See, there has been a litany of anime from the early 2010s that have made a long-anticipated return in the last couple of years, like Blue Exorcist and The Devil is a Part-Timer. And in almost all of these circumstances, I think Blue Exorcist is kind of exempt from this. The original hype that revolves around this IP returning kind of disappears after the first episode. Now, you could say that this happens for a myriad of different reasons. I know personally I didn't watch season 2 of The Devil's a Part-Timer because they changed the art style, and the new art style made me really uncomfortable. But overall, I would say that the real reason that these long-awaited IPs don't do as well as they did in the early 2010s is that 10 years can change your taste in anime. If you asked 17-year-old Nick what the best anime ever created were, I would tell you SAO and High School DxD. And unfortunately, I think Black Butler is going to suffer from this tastes have changed symptom more than any other IP we've seen come back after a long break, as Black Butler was an acquired taste in 2012, when Tumblr ran the internet. And the idea of a little detective running around with a grown devil who definitely isn't hitting on him was... it was cute enough to get 3 seasons, but now, in 2024, that idea may not be as popular as it originally was. But Cloverworks is animating it, and the animation does look stunning, and it is a well-established IP. So, I'm gonna check out the first couple of episodes. And if you recently watched Black Butler and enjoyed it, then this is massive news for you. Or if you were the world's biggest Black Butler fan back in the day, then this is also massive news for you. I just watched Black Butler back in the day. I wasn't like, oh my god, I'm gonna watch this 4 times. I've seen it. In the same way that I've seen the first season of The Irregular at Magic School, which is also coming out with its 3rd season in spring 2024, which is wild because It didn't even feel popular when its first season came out. And I know so little about what happened in season 2, and I barely remember what happened in season 1. We're not even putting that on the list. But you know what we are putting on the list right above Black Butler? Date A Live 5. I can't believe I just said that either. And listen, I know a lot of you are probably wondering why Date A Live 5 is so high on this list. Hell, some of you are probably wondering why Date A Live is on this list at all. Nick, you're incredibly well spoken about the fact that you don't enjoy harem anime. You've grown out of them. Right? Well, I have. But I've begun to rethink that opinion. See, here's the thing. There was a time in my life when Date A Live was my favorite, not even just anime, but maybe thing on Earth. And I'm not ashamed to say that. For those of you who were happy as children, or maybe just popular, Date A Live is a story where an event called a spatial quake shakes the Earth and kills 150 million people. And then for the next 30 years, smaller spatial quakes continue to happen. And while they don't all kill 150 million people, none of them are good. And therefore, in the first episode of this show, it's revealed from our MC's adopted sister, I hate that that's important, that the cause of these spatial quakes is because of all of these magical girls, or spirits, from other dimensions ending up in Earth's dimension. And then it's revealed that Cheeto, the totally regular student, has the ability to seal these spirits' powers so they can't continue causing damage. And all he has to do to seal their power is go on a date with them and then make them fall in love with him and then seal their powers with a kiss. And while this sounds ridiculous, because it is, if you have a hole in your heart in the shape of attention from the gender you're attracted to, this show will guaranteed keep you from joining Kurt Cobain for at least a little bit. Now, I haven't watched this show since season 2 came out in 2014. A decade ago. But this may be the last ever season of this show, as the end of season 4 adapted up until volume 17. And there's only 22 volumes in the entirety of Date A Live, meaning there's only 50-ish chapters left in this story, which means that if season 5 is 12 episodes, it'll probably adapt somewhere between 24 and 36 chapters. Now that also means if they run 24 episodes, they could just adapt all 50. So will I hop back on the Date A Live train? Maybe if Dorothy leaves for a weekend. I can feel the angry, lonely, and sad 17-year-old inside of me reaching out to the IP. Though I would also have to watch season 3, all the additional movies, season 4, and then watch season 5. So it's a lot of harem anime to get caught up on. If I ever start to look worse, it's because I started Date A Live. After the only harem anime to still hold a place in my heart, we have a show that's been torturing me for the last week because it's been shown as watchable on Crunchyroll when all they have on Crunchyroll is a promotional video. Because coming up next, we got Kaiju number 8. Now in a less packed season, Kaiju number 8 would be top of my list in hype, and probably top of everybody's list in hype. But in this season, Kaiju number 8 came in 7th in the popularity contest of people anticipating anime, below the second part of the second season of The Misfit at Demon King Academy, which is literally just the reskinning of the irregular at Magic School. But Kaiju number 8 also isn't the anime I'm most hyped about in this upcoming season, which is crazy, because not only is it the only seinen on this list, seinen, for those of you who don't know, is shonen for older people. It's about a man in his 30s, which you almost never see in manga and anime. And this man lived his entire life fantasizing about joining an elite group in his world known as the Defense Corps, a group of high-level soldiers who battle against the ongoing and persistent threat of kaijus. However, because he was unremarkable, he at the age of 32 has decided to give up on his dreams and settle for cleaning up after the Defense Corps when they kill a kaiju, because of the stability and the good paycheck. This is until a parasitic kaiju finds its way into his mouth and turns him into a kaiju human hybrid, capable of shifting into a kaiju form that's strong enough to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the strongest kaijus in his world. Now, Kaiju number 8's manga got massively popular a couple of years ago when it first dropped, and has since then been polling in the top 10 area of popularity polls of weekly released manga. And it is finally getting the anime adaptation it deserves. And being an elderly, as I am, I have begun to navigate closer and closer to seinen as opposed to shonen. Because, and feel free to call me weird here if you like, I'm finding it harder and harder to relate to teenagers. So this story revolving around a man who in his early 30s decides to reinvigorate his passion for pursuing his dreams, and in the midst of trying once again to accomplish the thing he's always wanted, actually gets a chance to do said thing, is a lot more of an exciting pitch for me for a second chance at life story than some loser neat who beats his mother for food, dies in a crosswalk, and then gets dropped into a mystical world where there's 17 underaged women really yearning for him. And therefore, I would say that Kaiju number 8 is exactly what the anime world needs right now. Not to mention Toho, who animated Dr. Stone, JJK Season 1, Akame ga Kill, all the good seasons of MHA, and Haikyuu is animating it. And everything we've seen from the promotional videos given to us thus far has shown us that A, the comedy from the manga is being perfectly conveyed in the anime, and B, the fights are gonna look gorgeous. So if you can only make room for a couple of anime this season, make sure that Kaiju number 8 is one of them, especially if you're old. Now this is gonna sound somewhat backwards, but you're probably old if you're a fan of our next entry on this list, MHA, coming out with its 7th season. And not only are you old, you're probably sad, because somehow MHA is sitting at number 5 in my anime list's popularity list for upcoming anime, which is a crazy thing to say out loud and something I wouldn't have believed if you told me 4 years ago. There was a time that MHA held the anime world by the throat. Now 3 good anime and a story about a sexual offender have more people waiting to watch their upcoming seasons than MHA's 7th season. And what's truly crazy is that season 7 has a fair shot at being one of MHA's greatest, as season 7 will cover the first half of MHA's war arc, with key battles like Annie Voice and Dupla Arms versus Spinner, Stars and Stripes versus Shigaraki, and literally so much more. Pretty much from the moment episode 1 drops, we are going to get fight after fight after fight of consequence, and therefore the season is going to be undoubtedly one of the most hectic and action-packed we've ever seen from this IP. So why is it so low on my list? It's still being animated by Bones, who haven't done a stellar job with the last couple of seasons, and I worry with how recently season 6 was released, literally 1 year ago, that Bones hasn't had the time to animate the literal litany of very important fights they need to animate in the way that those fights deserve to be animated. Listen, I have no doubt in my mind that Stars and Stripes versus Shigaraki is going to be impressive. It has to be. But there's also like 7 other either majorly important or minorly important battles that will happen in this season. And it's those fights that I'm worried about. And to think that every single one of those fights was given the attention they deserved, all done in 1 year, seems kind of like a stretch to me. But if somehow Bones does pull it off, which I would say is about a 50-50 chance right now, unfortunately, I think I know how the MHA story ends. And the MHA story is currently building its way towards one of the most boring and predictable endings in the last decade of manga. And therefore, watching the anime just doesn't feel important anymore. But hey, here's the hope and I'm wrong. After MHA, we have another massively popular IP, possibly barreling towards catastrophe. Because after MHA, we have Demon Slayer's Hashira training arc. Now, I hesitate to even put this on the list of spring 2024 anime because it doesn't come out until May 12th, a full month behind every other seasonal release. And I mean, sure, MHA is coming out on May 4th, but that's still a whole week after MHA. Slime Isekai is coming out April 5th. That's 5 weeks behind Slime Isekai. But the thing is, Demon Slayer's delayed release kind of makes sense. A lot more than MHA's at least, because the Hashira training arc is 9 chapters long. So with modern day anime pacing, that is at most 4 episodes. But 3 episodes is probably the much more accurate guess. But that would still only put us ballpark 8 to 9 weeks into the spring anime season, which means that either Demon Slayer is going to start 5 weeks into the season and then end 3 weeks early, or they'll adapt 3 to 4 weeks worth of Infinity Castle. And as it currently stands, I don't know what they're gonna do, as all of the promotional content they've dropped thus far only references the Hashira training arc. But let me tell you right now, while it is nice to have Inosuke and Zenitsu back in the story, if they only adapt the 9 chapters that are the Hashira training arc, it will be the worst season in Demon Slayer history. And well, obviously, that's a very high bar, as Swordsmith Village, which is considered to be the worst season of Demon Slayer, is still very good. Releasing a 3-episode mini-season would not be a good look for Demon Slayer, because even though the Swordsmith Village arc was good, at least I thought it was good, a lot of people are upset about it, but I think Bones and the showrunners that run Demon Slayer know this. And thus, after the Hashira training arc, we will get the beginning of the Infinity Castle arc, which will be absolutely massive for the fandom, as the Infinity Castle arc is undeniably the best arc in the manga. And because I believe, genuinely, that we're gonna get 3 to 4 episodes of the Infinity Castle arc at the end of the Hashira training arc, that's why Demon Slayer is so high on my list. Because trust me, if it was just the Hashira training arc, which is a glorified training montage, it would have been below Windbreaker. It would be borderline not worth watching if it was just that. So we're gonna have to grit our teeth through a 3 to 4 episode training arc, but we're gonna be rewarded at the end with 3 to 4 episodes of the greatest arc in Demon Slayer history. And at the very least, that training arc is gonna look super pretty, because Ufotable somehow has infinite money. I mean, they have Demon Slayer, which for the last 6 years has been a money printing factory, so It's probably how they have infinite money. Now, after Demon Slayer, we have a project that I'm very excited about that you probably haven't heard about yet. And that would be none other than Go Go Loser Ranger, which I know feels high for an anime being made by YoStar Pictures, whose claim to fame is Arknights and Azure Lane. I know, two massive anime that everybody's seen. But stick with me here. Go Go Loser Rangers is what happens when you mix the boys with Power Rangers. And as somebody who loves both of those things, I am very here for it. Basically, the story is that 13 years prior to the events of the manga, Demon Army invades Earth, but that Demon Army is summarily defeated by the protectors of the Earth, basically the Power Rangers of that Earth, the Dragon Keepers. And now every year, on the anniversary of the Dragon Keepers defeating the Demon Army, those who survive from the Demon Army are forced to relive and reenact their defeat at the hands of the very same Dragon Keepers. And this is done in a massive arena that's televised to the entire nation. But these demons comprising this army aren't so different from the humans and the world that they were trying to take over. It's annoying and nauseating. And so the main character of the story, who's forced to relive this embarrassment every single year, attempts to find something known as the Divine Artifacts, which were weapons wielded by the Dragon Keepers, and are the only weapons in the universe that are able to destroy the immortal bodies of these demons. Now, these Divine Artifacts were collected by a demon who was actually able to infiltrate the Dragon Keepers prior to the events of the manga. However, after collecting those Divine Artifacts, they disappear. And thus the story follows our main character, Foot Soldier D, or just D as he's known in the story, as he attempts to collect these Divine Artifacts and use them to kill the Power Rangers, or Dragon Keepers. So if you like the boys, Power Rangers, or following an antagonist story, you're really gonna like this story. Now, the only hesitancy that I have in recommending it is that the Dragon Keepers appear to be animated using CGI, which might be a bit distracting. But outside of that, the show looks gorgeous, at least for an animation studio with so few critical hits. Now, after Go Go Loser Ranger, we have two, yes, that's right, two isekai. Yeah, I'm more excited for two separate isekai than I am for Demon Slayer, MHA, and Kaiju No. 8. And the first of those isekai that I'm so excited for is Slime Isekai, also known by its full name, That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. And while I'm aware it's one of those shows with a stupidly long title, and therefore you're like, oh, that's gotta be a dumb show, it is, for all intents and purposes, the perfect isekai, and it hasn't released a new episode since 2021. Now, for those of you who haven't started Slime Isekai, it is one of two good remaining isekai on Earth. It follows the story of Rimuru, a man who's reincarnated into a mythical world as the weakest monster in that world, slime. But using his absorption ability, Rimuru slowly but surely absorbs more and more powerful magical entities until eventually he's about as broken as any MC isekai should be.
But Nick, this sounds like every isekai.
Unlike, you're kind of right, but Rimuru is A, genderless and thus can be shipped both ways, and B, actually intelligent, not pervy, convincingly powerful, and absolutely ruthless. On top of this, the world building in Slime Isekai is second to none, and thus the political scheming that happens in this show is next level. Basically, Rimuru is building a nation of monsters, where every class of monsters can come together and live in harmony. And while some nations are receptive to this idea, as there's many demi-human classes that live amongst this nation of monsters, other nations are not, and thus other nations need to be destroyed. And therefore, for all intents and purposes, Slime Isekai is the perfect isekai, and season 3 is going to revolve around Rimuru battling his most powerful opponent yet, Hinata Sakaguchi, the wielder of the sword, the Dead End Rainbow, capable of bypassing the defenses of all that it slashes and slashing directly to the soul, which guarantees with 7 slashes anybody of any power will die. On top of that, the studio, 8-Bit, that's animating Slime Isekai, really doesn't have any other critical successes, so it's gonna be all hands on deck for this season, and they've had 3 years to work on it. It also comes out April 5th, which I believe is the first out of all of the shows that we've talked about thus far. Go Go Loser Ranger is April 7th, The Irregular Magic School is April 5th, Data Live is April 10th, Kaiju No. 8 is April 13th, MHA is May 4th, Slime Isekai is April 5th, Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer is May 12th, and then our number 1 spot, which goes to another isekai, Konosuba, comes out April 10th. Yes, that's right, the top 2 entries on my list of hype coming up for spring 2024 are isekai, and I'm not even settling, because below that are MHA and Demon Slayer, because Konosuba is the other of the only 2 good isekai left in existence. For those of you who haven't watched Konosuba, A, what are you doing? And B, join the bandwagon because apparently Konosuba is the most anticipated anime coming in spring 2024. More than Demon Slayer. That is insane to me. But it makes sense because Konosuba is, and I mean this with my full chest, the funniest anime ever made. And we haven't gotten a new season since 2017. Now, we did get a Megumin spin-off, but that wasn't good, so it doesn't count. Now, for those of you who haven't jumped on the bandwagon yet, Konosuba is a story about a boy who goes to save a little girl who's about to get truck-cooned. That boy does save that little girl from her fate of becoming the main character of an isekai anime. However, where the story immediately differentiates itself from literally all other isekai is that he doesn't save the little girl. The truck stops, but he thinks he's gonna be hit by the truck, so he has a heart attack, and then he poops his pants. And then everybody in his life is just like, what a loser. After this, he's sent to purgatory of sorts, where he meets a goddess who's preparing him to be sent to a mythical world. And when he's told by this goddess that he can take one thing with him to this next mythical life, he chooses her, thinking she's some omnipotent god that's gonna help him in his next life. But she's not. She's completely useless. And so is basically everybody that Kazuma, our MC, ever recruits to help him. Specifically to help him in his battle against the Demon King who terrorizes the world that he's been teleported into. See, whether it's a mage who can use the strongest magic on Earth, but only once and then she faints, a goddess whose only ability is parlor tricks and purifying water, or a tank who's only a tank because she likes pain. Basically, everybody in the show is an idiot, and it's fantastic. Now, it's important to note that the show is stuffed to the gills with fan service, but less in a fan servicey way and more of a it's kind of funny to laugh about sexual things way. But if you're gonna detract points from Konosuba for anything, it should probably be that. On top of that, a large plot point in this upcoming season is Kazuma going to the royal city to tell the princess of the royal family about his endeavors as a hero, and he kind of more than anything just wants her to call him Big Brother because she's like a sweet, innocent little princess. But I'm pretty sure that's as far as his goals reach. I think. It's been a while since I read the manga, but I think it's kind of innocent. And this show, about 4 idiots trying to kill a demon king, has more people waiting to watch it than MHA and Demon Slayer. By a lot. But then again, I'm putting it at the top of my list, so I guess that says something. And that's it. All the important anime coming out this season. Nothing else important coming out, just 2 and only 2 really good isekai. It's so crazy we're getting the only 2 good isekai still left coming out this season. And those 2 isekai are Slime Isekai and Konosuba. Slime Isekai and Konosuba, the only isekai coming out this season. So if you're gonna watch an isekai this season, watch those 2. Not that there's any other choice, those are the only 2 isekai coming out this season. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What are you excited to watch in this upcoming season? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Oh, I'm sorry. Also, as a reincarnated aristocrat, I'll use my appraisal skill as another isekai coming out. So there's 3.